The cliffs groaned beneath a sky that had forgotten rain. Every breath of wind carried the dry taste of dust and the ghosts of storms that once roared here. In that stillness, a girl stood at the edge of the world, her heart tuned to the trembling silence above. The villagers called it madness, to speak to thunder. But she heard voices in the clouds, faint murmurs woven through the hush of drought. Tonight, something stirred within the darkness beyond the horizon, a hum-like breath held by the heavens. When her lips parted, her words rose like silver threads through the air, and the sky, long asleep, shivered awake. For the first time in years, lightning blinked over the sea, answering her whisper with a heartbeat of light. The storm faded before dawn, leaving the scent of petrichor and disbelief. The village below murmured of omens, some whispering blessings, others curses. Yet she walked the cliffs again, drawn by an ache she couldn't name. The wind spoke in half-formed words now, urging her to listen deeper, to remember something ancient, buried beneath silence. Each step felt like trespass into sacred ground, yet her heart beat in rhythm with distant thunder. She didn't fear the storm's return. She feared its absence. Below, the villagers gathered around empty wells, arguing whether the girl had angered or awakened the sky. Their fear pressed against her like weight, but she could not unhear the hum that followed her everywhere. In every rustle of leaves, every sigh of wind through the stones, the storm was calling her name, though she had never told it her own. That night, as silence draped the fields, she dreamed of thunder shaped like a voice. It called from beyond the sea, a sound vast enough to shake mountains, yet it whispered as gently as rain on glass. When she woke, her window trembled, though the air was still. Somewhere above the stars, the sky waited for her reply. When morning came, clouds had gathered again, heavier, darker, waiting. The sea groaned like a living thing. She stood once more at the cliff's edge, her heart echoing the pulse of thunder. This time, when she spoke, her voice did not disappear into silence. It came back to her, low and resonant, like the breath of something awakening from centuries of sleep. The second dawn after the whisper came heavy with clouds that refused to break. The villagers no longer spoke her name aloud. They watched her as if she carried the storm beneath her skin. She walked through the market in silence, feeling the air thicken around her, every heartbeat thrumming with static. Somewhere above, thunder murmured her unspoken thoughts. She did not seek to summon it now. It followed her, remembering her voice. The gulls circled low over the cliffs, uneasy, and in their cries she heard faint words in a tongue older than wind. She realized then that the storm had not answered her by chance. It had recognized her. The sky had known her long before she spoke. By evening, wind howled through the valley, scattering salt dust like ghostly feathers. She followed it to the shoreline, where lightning shimmered beyond the horizon. There, among the tide pools, she found a stranger watching the same storm, his arms marked with faint white scars that gleamed whenever thunder rolled. He turned toward her as if expecting her arrival, his eyes mirroring the shifting light. "You heard it too," he said, though she had not spoken. His voice carried the tremor of distant rain, and in that instant she knew the storm's memory was not hers alone. They sat by a dying fire as night deepened, the storm murmuring in the distance like an old song. He told her of the relic he carried, a shard of skystone bound to his bloodline, cursed to awaken only when spoken to by one who could hear the wind. His ancestors had made a pact to keep the balance between earth and cloud, but the promise was broken when the storms fell silent. As he spoke, the embers pulsed brighter, responding to unseen rhythm. She realized that her voice had not called the storm. It had called him, and through him the sky had remembered its vow. Thunder broke closer that night, crawling across the sea like a living creature. She stood beside him on the rocks, her voice trembling with the rhythm of rain that refused to fall. "If the sky remembers," she whispered, "what does it want?" His answer came as a flicker of blue light across his scars. "It wants what was stolen," he said. The air pulsed between them, heavy with unspoken truths. Lightning split the darkness, and for an instant she saw a vast shape in the clouds, something watching them both, vast as sorrow itself. At dawn, the wind fell still, leaving a silence that felt unnatural. The villagers found strange patterns burned into the sand, spirals like the eyes of storms. Elara returned from the shore, her heartbeat echoing faint thunder deep within her chest. The world seemed to lean toward her now, listening. In the still air, she heard her name carried not as sound but as presence, a memory whispered from the heavens. Somewhere beyond the veil of clouds, the sky was calling, remembering every word she had dared to speak. The storm slept again, but its silence was not peace, it was waiting. Elara followed Kale to the village edge, where Elder Mira kept her records in a house carved from stone and salt. The old woman's eyes carried centuries of secrets. She listened as Elara spoke of voices in the clouds and lightning that knew her name, and she did not seem surprised. Instead, she lit a candle and drew a symbol on the table, spiraling lines that mirrored those burned into the sand. "You have reopened the covenant," she whispered, her voice trembling like brittle parchment. "Every storm has a heart. Once it beats, it must be fed." Elder Mira spoke of the first pact, the day when the sky spirit had descended, clothed in storm, to grant humankind rain. In exchange, a voice from among them was given, a soul who could speak the language of clouds. When greed silenced that voice, the spirit retreated, leaving the world to thirst. Now, with Elara's whisper, the promise stirred once more. "The storm will remember its hunger," the elder warned, "and if you do not offer what it asks, it will take." Elara felt the truth coil through her chest like thunder about to break. The power she carried was not a blessing. It was an old debt come due. Night fell heavy and strange. Kale stood outside Mira's hut, the relic pulsing faintly beneath his coat, the rhythm matching the distant rumble of thunder. He told Elara of the pact his ancestors had broken, how their bloodline once bound lightning to earth, but the silence of the chosen voice had cursed them with endless drought. "You were never meant to wake it," he said, his voice low, filled with grief. But she could not regret what she had done. For the first time, the sky had felt alive. Still, as she looked into his eyes, she saw lightning reflected there, and behind it, something ancient stirring, remembering its chains. At midnight, Elder Mira took them to the cliffs where the covenant had first been forged. There, etched into the black rock, symbols pulsed faintly, spirals of light awakening beneath her steps. The air quivered, charged with ancient awareness. The elder spoke words that trembled the earth, and Elara felt something vast respond through her veins. The voice of the sky whispered again, not to her ears, but within her pulse. It said only one word, and it was not her name. It was a memory of hunger. When the ritual ended, silence fell so deep, it felt like the breath before creation. The elder collapsed to her knees, her candle extinguished by invisible wind. "It knows you now," she whispered. "It remembers your heart." Elara stood trembling as thunder rolled without sound, felt through the bones rather than heard. Kale reached for her, but the air between them sparked, a shiver of light and pain. She understood then what Mira had meant. If every storm has a heart, it must be fed with one. And the sky had already chosen whose. The third night after the ritual, the wind forgot how to breathe. The sea lay still as glass beneath a sky too quiet to trust. Elara waited on the cliff where her whisper had first been heard. Every part of her ached with memory. The hum of the clouds, the pulse of thunder, the taste of ozone in her mouth. Then, without warning, the silence split open. Lightning fell in slow motion, threading itself into the shape of something vast. It did not strike the ground. It stood upon it. And when it spoke, its voice was not sound, but the echo of storms remembered. "You called me," it said, and her heart answered before her lips could. Its presence was unbearable and beautiful, a living sky compressed into form. Words spilled through her mind. Images, memories, griefs older than time. The spirit spoke of rain stolen by those who worshipped without listening, of balance undone by voices silenced. "Your kind forgot the language of storms," it murmured, each word a gust that bent the grass flat. "But you remembered." She felt her bones hum with its sorrow, the weight of centuries pouring through her veins. When she opened her eyes, she was crying, not tears, but drops of pure rain. Kale found her kneeling in the storm's heart, her eyes glazed in reverence. Lightning flickered across his face as he reached for her, but the moment his hand touched her shoulder, the storm shuddered. The spirit turned its vast gaze toward him, recognizing the bloodline bound to its chain. "You carry what was stolen," it thundered, its voice shaking the world. Kale's knees buckled under the sound. "I never meant to," he gasped. Elara stood between them, wind and light tearing through her hair. "Then free him," she cried, though she did not yet understand the price of freedom. The spirit's voice lowered to something almost tender. "To free what is bound, one must return what was taken." It turned its gaze toward the sea, and in the reflection she saw endless storms chained beneath the waves. "Your world survives because my heart sleeps," it said. "If I wake, the rain will come, but so will ruin." The air pulsed with tension, and Elara felt herself caught between two fates. Kale's eyes pleaded with hers, a silent request not to answer. Yet when the wind brushed her lips again, the words rose, unbidden. "Then wake," she whispered, and the horizon split in two. When the word left her lips, the world convulsed. The storm rose like a living creature breaking its chains. Waves climbed the cliffs. Lightning shattered the sky into rivers of light. Through the chaos, the spirit's voice trembled with something like gratitude and sorrow. "You have remembered me," it said. "And now I remember you." Elara felt herself dissolve, every breath part of the wind, every heartbeat part of thunder. Kale shouted her name, but she could no longer hear him. For one luminous heartbeat, she stood between heaven and earth, and both claimed her. The morning after the storm's awakening arrived bruised and golden. The sea steamed like breath, the air thick with the scent of metal and rain. Elara awoke on the wet stones, her skin humming faintly with light, but Kale knelt beside her pale as ash. The relic at his throat flickered weakly, every pulse of its glow matched by the slowing rhythm of his heart. "You freed it," he whispered, "and now it feeds through me." The truth struck her like thunder, his life tethered to the storm's rebirth. The rain that now blessed the land was drawn from him drop by drop. Her gift had become his curse. Days passed, and rain returned to the parched earth. Rivers awakened, crops lifted their heads, and the people called her blessed. Yet she could not rejoice. Kale weakened with every storm that passed, the light in his eyes dimming like a candle nearing its end. At night she sat beside him beneath the whispering wind, listening to the storm's voice through his shallow breaths. "The balance must hold," the sky spirit murmured through thunder. She wanted to scream that love was worth imbalance, but the sky does not bargain. It remembers only truth. And truth demanded sacrifice. Elder Mira returned, her staff cracking the puddled ground. She had seen the rivers rise and knew what it cost. "The sky is not cruel," she told Elara, "but it keeps its promises." Elara begged for another way, yet the elder only shook her head. To end the storm's hunger, its heart must sleep again, and the heart it chose beats within him. Lightning flashed without thunder, and the world seemed to hold its breath. Elara realized then that her voice could command storms, but not mercy. What she had awakened, she now had to silence. Night fell once more, thick with rain. Elara walked to the cliffs, carrying Kale's relic in her hands, its light fading with every step. The storm loomed overhead, vast and sorrowful, recognizing its tether. "If I silence you," she whispered to the sky, "will the world burn again?" The clouds pulsed, answering with a rumble that shook her bones. She turned toward the wind, hair plastered to her face, and screamed, not in defiance but devotion. The relic flared, answering her cry, and lightning curved downward like the touch of a god. The storm had heard her command once more. The storm's voice filled the world. "If you would spare him," it thundered, "then bear the weight yourself." She felt her heart seize, every drop of rain drawn toward her chest, like breath reversing its course. The relic dissolved into light that sank into her palms. Kale's body fell still, the glow leaving him, while the wind around her roared with life renewed. She collapsed to her knees as the rain ceased, her heart beat, sensing with the soft rumble of clouds above. She had taken his burden, the balance restored. But where love once lived, only silence remained. The village awoke to silence, the kind that comes only after miracles or mourning. The storm had gone, leaving silver rivers running through the once cracked soil. In the center of that reborn world, Elara stood motionless beside Kale's body, her eyes distant and unfocused. The relic's light pulsed beneath her skin, now faint but steady. When the villagers approached, they bowed in awe, mistaking her stillness for peace. But within her, the sky stirred, restless and alive. She could hear every droplet falling, every breath the clouds took, and in those whispers she heard his voice. The storm had not ended. It had moved inside her. By nightfall, her body no longer obeyed the rules of Earth. The wind moved when she breathed, and her voice carried echoes of thunder even in whispers. She wandered the shore, feeling the tide rise and fall with her pulse. The sky spirit no longer loomed above. It lived within, murmuring of harmony and hunger. "You are the bridge," it told her, between silence and song. Yet each word was tinged with longing, for even the divine cannot bear loneliness. She gazed toward the stars and wondered whether the heavens wept, or whether they were simply too full to hold their light. Elder Mira came once more, drawn by rumor and reverence. She found Elara standing amid rain that fell only where she walked, sunlight shining elsewhere. "You've become its voice," the elder whispered, her tone reverent and sorrowful. Elara looked at her, eyes calm and inhuman. "No," she said softly. "I've become its memory." Around them, every droplet hung suspended, waiting for her command. Mira fell to her knees, realizing she was not speaking to a girl anymore, but to the balance itself, the heart and silence of every storm reborn. Days became uncounted. She no longer slept. She drifted between realms of sky and sea, her thoughts echoing through rain clouds. The spirit's sorrow became her own, yet she bore it gently, reshaping the world drop by drop. When she wept, mountains softened beneath green moss. When she sang, rivers found their voice again. She was no longer bound by body, but memory kept her human. The memory of a boy with lightning scars and a promise unspoken. His name trembled through every thunderclap, each one her prayer back to the world, she could never return to. One evening, when the rain finally rested, she stood once more on the cliff where it all began. The sea shimmered calm beneath her, the sky alive but gentle. She whispered to the horizon, her voice soft as wind through glass. "Remember us," she said, not as plea, but as blessing. The air quivered, and for an instant she felt Kale's warmth beside her, his laughter hidden in the breeze. Then her form dissolved into light, scattering upward through the clouds until only the echo of her voice remained. A promise carried forever in the sound of falling rain. Years passed, and the world healed beneath gentle rain. The drought became legend, its story softened by time. Children played in rivers that once lay dry, and elders spoke of a girl who had vanished into the clouds. Only Elder Mira still kept vigil at the cliffs, her eyes searching the sky each dawn for a sign. One morning, as mist rose from the sea, she heard a faint whisper, threaded through the wind, soft, melodic, and familiar. It was not a storm's voice nor human. It was something between, something alive. She smiled then, knowing the promise had never been broken. The sky still remembered her name. In the village of Thalenreach, rain became ritual. Every season they gathered to thank the sky, lighting lanterns that floated upward like golden tears. No one remembered the true name of the girl who had once spoken to storms, but her legend had grown into a hymn. They sang not to beg for rain, but to offer gratitude, to remind the heavens they still listen. And though few noticed, each time their song rose, a soft wind would stir, curling through the lantern smoke, carrying a whisper of laughter that sounded almost human. Far beyond the cliffs, a lone wanderer crossed the coast one evening. A boy with eyes like distant storms and a pendant of silver lightning resting against his chest. He had never known her, yet her story had followed him like shadow. Standing at the same cliff where the legend began, he felt a pull toward the sea. When he whispered a question into the wind, the sky shivered in reply. The echo came not in thunder, but in a single resonant note, a sound filled with warmth and wonder. Somewhere above, she was listening. High above the world, within the eternal churn of clouds, the sky spirit drifted through its memories. Its voice had softened, its sorrow eased. It carried within it the essence of the girl who had once spoken to it, her laughter woven into rain, her gentleness hidden in thunder's edge. When it wept, it was not for loss, but remembrance. Through her it had learned what no eternity could teach, that even storms long for the touch of mortal kindness. The wind sang her name, and in every storm thereafter, the world did not tremble. It listened. And so the story passed from truth into myth, from myth into whisper. Yet each time a storm gathers over Thalenreach, the people pause and tilt their faces toward the rain. They say her voice still lingers in it, guiding every drop home. The sky, in turn, never forgets the sound of her name. On certain nights, when thunder rolls gentle and rain hums soft against the earth, one can almost hear it, her laughter, bright as lightning, echoing across eternity. The girl who spoke to storms had not vanished. She had become the promise that the sky would always answer.